Chris Peaks back with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast. And we've got Randolph County Superintendent John Jacobs here with us today. He's running for the House. So, Mr. Jacobs, how's the campaign going?
It's going pretty good, staying busy. Since I do currently have a position, I'm not neglecting my position here, so I don't get out as much as I would like to meet people, but do what I can on the weekends and sometimes in the afternoons.
Uh, Mr. Jacobs, I read your profile, and you're also a farmer, and you've got rancher, and have a timber operation. We've interviewed a few farmers and ranchers. You're our first pecan grower. Exactly how does that business work?
Well, a friend of mine up here, he's got about 400 pecan trees in his orchard, and he sells them locally. He ships them. So my son was interested in doing that with his portion of the property, as a long-term investment. So we set out some pecan trees last year, and then we set out another round this year and added an irrigation system to them. So he has all the shakers that take the tree and shakes the tree, and then the pickers, and he has the cracker. He has everything for the operation over there.
That's really cool.
If you ever get over this way, you should go by his place. It's one of the most beautiful places in Randolph County as far as a view from his house and his farm. And currently, he is the president of the Alabama Pecan Growers Association, which I'm a member of.
Mr. Jacobs, for people who may not know, can you tell us a little bit about your district? I mean, demographics, what people do for work, that kind of stuff.
Well, the demographics are really varied in our district. District 37 encompasses Randolph, all of Randolph County, the majority of the land in Chambers County, and then a little slice of Lee County that's in the middle of the county down to, say, the middle of downtown Opelika, over to 147 on 280, and then over around Grand National Golf course on the east side. So we are varied. Randolph County is mainly rural. The portion of Chambers County that's in my district is rural. And the very northern part of Lee County that joins Chambers is rural, but it also goes into some of the manufacturing district and the town of Opelika. So we have a varied workforce. I'm going to say in Randolph and Chambers County, the majority of the people that live in my district travel outside the district for work. Um, so we would love to see a little more industry, and the area down around I-85 in Lee County is really growing. So that should help Chambers and Randolph County also with some jobs in the future where we don't have to go as far away.
So this is Bob Fincher's district, and he's not running again. So there's three of y'all running in the Republican primary.
There are three of us on the Republican primary, yes, and Bob
You
has
will
done a
face a
good job.
Democrat in the fall.
Correct. One Democrat in the fall.
Mr. Chambers, being a superintendent of education, what problems do you see that needs to be addressed to improve Alabama school systems, and what measures would you take to do that?
Well, a lot of the issues in the rural systems is just the tax base. Um, if if you're in if you're in a city, you have a little better tax base than what we do here in Randolph County and rural parts of Chambers County. Lee County, the Lee County schools, they're a little better because of just having the interstate coming through and their portion of what's spent in Lee County. Um, most of the decisions to make uh, tax base is a local decision for the schools. I don't know how the state could really change their allocations any to allot us more, but the state does provide a lot of finances for us here in the county.
This past session, the legislature has passed the Choose Act, and I think we're allocating $180 million or something for, students to go to a private or homeschool. Would that benefit your district?
No, that actually it takes money away from, the local districts. However, I think the people that are going to private school or homeschooling, they're making that choice anyway. We did not see an uptick in numbers that were homeschooling or private school when that act came out.
Are there any changes you would like to see as far as curriculum and how it is instructed?
Okay.
Well, on our curriculum, the state sets our curriculum. We're not aligned with what everybody wants to think, no child left behind, and those type things. Those have all gone away. And Alabama has set their own standards for our subjects, and our test scores have really gone up as far as comparable to other states. And that is just a tribute to our teachers, our students, and our parents of working hard. So I think we have a good setup as far as that goes. Our state board of education does a good job. We have a fantastic state superintendent. So we all work together with that. And I'm on the board of directors for the Alabama School Superintendents Association. So we meet with legislators and um, the the state superintendent on a regular basis.
I live in St. Clair County, which is pretty much all Republican. We have all the offices. We've had all the offices for years. So I don't think when we go to the if we go to the closed primary system, that it will affect, us at all, because everybody who actually wants to vote for their superintendent or their school board is voting in the Republican primary. Your district with Lee County and Randolph County is a little bit more diverse than we are. Do you think there will be problems in your district if this is implemented like the legislature, like the House passed it, the Senate still has to deal with it?
I don't believe it will. Occasionally, you might have a situation where there was one person running on a Democratic ticket and two or three on the Republican side, and Democrats might uh, go over to the Republican primary and they would vote for a person that they thought was most likely to lose. So that could be an issue, but I don't think it would be a big issue in our county. Most of our people are going to vote for who they feel will do the best job.
Mr. Jacobs, concerning your district, what do you think is the biggest issue uh, facing your citizens?
Well, right now in Randolph and Chambers County, I would think housing is one thing, affordable, housing and rental properties to where people can have a good place to stay. I think in Lee County they have the apartments and the housing subdivisions are going up in Lee County, just left and right. So that area is really growing with there. So some affordable housing, out in the rural districts the rural areas would be helpful.
This past quadrennium, the legislature has cut the grocery tax in half. We've gone from a 4%, state grocery tax to a 2%. Do you think we need to just hold there, or do you think that in the next 4 years we should eliminate that?
Well, I like lowering the grocery tax because certain members of our population, it's hard to pay the tax on the groceries. But like for education and fire services and things like that, if that money is removed from the Education Trust Fund and other entities that rely on that money, it has to be replaced from somewhere else. You know, because it's a pretty good chunk of change that the state loses.
Along the same lines of funds, where's your positions on legalizing gambling and a lottery and sports betting and that's so forth in the state?
Well, my position on that is people are betting every day anyway. You know, you can bet online, so I'm okay with that. As far as the lottery, right here on the Georgia line where we're at, people play the lottery every day. So I would be for a lottery. You know, to me, that would be a way where we could, back our schools a little bit more in our school systems if we use the lottery money for scholarships and for the K-12 school systems.
Um, the one issue that keeps killing the gambling bills isn't that there isn't enough votes to support a lottery. It's, they're always, the gambling proponents want to attach casino gambling and sports gambling in there. And then they get to arguing about who's going to be allowed to do the casino gambling and the sports gaming. Are you for a comprehensive lottery plan? I mean, gambling plan that includes casinos, a sports book,
If we could work it out,
maybe betting on your
yeah, if we could work it out with a comprehensive plan, I would be
sale.
fine with that. But I would also wouldn't mind just if that's not a reality and there's so much opposition and hardness of coming to a compromise there is to at least get a lottery in to where we could support our schools and some of our infrastructure things that we desperately need.
Mr. Jacobs, she was talking about the housing in your district, and that was been a problem. Is there anything as a legislator you can do to help provide more housing or lower the prices?
I really I'm I really don't know the answer to that. Um, just because my my relationship with legislators so far has just been with with education. I know there are a lot of builders in the legislature that I talk to on a regular basis, but haven't gone too deep into that. I think that would be something to where we might give some incentive for someone to do a housing apartment complex, kind of like we do businesses that want to come in from outside. We could give them a tax break for a few years on what they're doing, to provide some housing.
Your district's pretty diverse. The Lee County portion, that's pretty much getting to be urban to suburban. But like Randolph County, um, that's getting pretty rural. Um, has the rural parts of your district been impacted by the issues affecting rural health care?
Well, we have Tanner Hospital here in Wedowee, and they do a fantastic job, and it has really helped Randolph County to have more medical care. We have specialist doctors that come from Georgia that are associated with Tanner, and they may only come 1 day or 2 days a week, but at least it does allow our residents to have specialists, with orthopedics, urologists, and heart doctors, anything like that, where it's easier for especially our older population, to come to Wedowee to have those normal meetings and normal, uh, you know, updates with their doctor instead of having to drive out of state, actually.
Mr. Jacobs, here over the last few years, we've had a lot of budget surpluses. Do you think that we should look at lowering the state income tax so we can compete with other states as far as lowering industry here?
Well, I'm not really in favor of that because we've had a real uptick in the economy, which has really helped with these surpluses. And when you look at the amount of money coming in right now, it's going to level out in a couple of years where costs are going up and the taxes are coming down. So the amount of surplus is not going to be there in the next few years like it has been in the past few years. And I'm afraid
Um,
that we may have given too many tax breaks and incentives that we're going to back up and be going in the wrong direction before long.
the legislature is considering, I think the Senate passed, it's in the House now, a proposed constitutional amendment that would direct the school boards to have the Pledge of Allegiance every morning in the schools and a student-led school prayer. Are you for or oppose that uh, constitutional
I would
amendment?
I would be for that. Currently here, we have students that, will lead prayer at sometimes at athletic events and do the pledge too. So, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm pro God and I'm pro United States and Alabama.
Mr. Jacobs, as far as education go again, do you think that we're spending the right amount of money in our school systems?
Well, we're spending a lot, and where we're spending it is seeing a lot of results. We're having math coaches in our school, we're having reading coaches in our school, and our reading scores and our math scores are really coming up. And that is due to uh, the individuals in those positions and working with the kids one on one a lot. It gets a lot more time with those students. And what we're doing, incorporating our science and our social studies into the reading portion. Instead of reading just a fiction story, you can read a story about history, and then you can bring the reading components to that into that lesson. So I think we're doing a really good job of putting our money where it needs to be as far as our students go.
I know the legislature has changed this, but as a school superintendent, um, did you have the issue of, boys wanting to play girls' sports and wearing dresses to school and want to go to the girls' bathroom and that sort of deal?
We have not had anyone that wanted to play, the sports. I've coached when I was coaching, I had a girl play junior high football for me. So I really don't have an issue with, something like that. But there is a lot of difference when it gets to, especially the high school level. I don't believe boys should be with girls. I don't think they should be in the same dressing room with them. So I'm totally opposed to that. I'm full, you, what you're born with is what you are, and that's what we need to do.
Mr. Jacobs, you're talking about industry there. Is there anything that you could do as a legislator to help bring some industry to your district?
Well, just working with the Chamber of Commerce's and the local towns with what they have and their recruitment. All businesses visit other, you know, I know they send people out to meet with these industries, trying to get them to come. And there again, if we can do something for a tax break on them for a few years to get them situated. A lot of our cities have, business parks where they have land set aside for somebody to come in for a business. We have the we have the workforce here. They're just mainly driving out of our district to somewhere else to work.
I live in St. Clair County where, our main transportation concerns would be like widening Highway 411 from Moody to Odenville or finishing the 6-lane project, from 459 to the St. Clair County line. What infrastructure projects are you aware of that's needed in District 37?
Well, I always think that Highway 431, US 431, if it was 4 lane from I-20 down to I-85, I think that would really open our area up for business. I know 431 has passing lanes. They're putting new passing lanes in between Roanoke and Lafayette now, and that will really help. But I do think in the future, if that's something that we could have, it would really open up our area to more industry than what we have. And then our local roads, our farm to market roads are not doing very well. They're kind of in disrepair. I'd love to see some more money come from the state to assist our counties and municipalities to keep these farm to market roads where they don't have so many potholes.
Still on the same lines, I mean, it seems that we were losing a lot of farmers because they can't make it economically. Is there anything we could do to help keep these guys farming?
Well, it's got to where right now, especially down more in the Lee County area, with what land prices are, it's hard for anybody to try to get started in the farming business with what equipment cost and the price of buying cows to get started. So I think what we have there now in line is what it's going to be as far as farming. There are not many full-time farmers unless they have poultry houses and then they have cows on the side. But as far as just, you know, row cropping full time, there's not very many of those left.
Um, the state has two budgets. The state general fund budget, which, I mean, no, you know this, but for the readers,
Right.
listeners, and then they have the education trust fund budget. Obviously, most of our money goes into education, but then we run into trouble with, the general fund budget because he's responsible for the state troopers, for the prisons, for state Medicaid, Department of Public Health, Department of Mental Health, the the parks and so forth and so on. Um, are you concerned that we don't really have a growth source of income for that general fund budget since all the income tax dollars go to education?
Well, I can see where that would be, a major concern as the state grows. The Education Trust Fund, I look at businesses coming in. One of the main things a company or an industry is going to look at for when they move to an area is the education system. So I think we need to keep an education system, in the forefront doing what we need to do for that. We also need to make sure we're doing something for recreation. All of our schools here have worked with the cities and they share facilities so that, what the schools have, the people are also allowed to use. Um, yeah, the education budget does take up a vast majority of what the money that does come in to the state. And that can be a concern if the cost of education keeps rising.
Yeah, we've seen growing in a lot of states. They've already legalized it. Now there's a push in Alabama. Do you think that it's time to legalize marijuana in Alabama, or should we still keep the laws as it is?
I'm okay with having marijuana for medical uses prescribed by a doctor, but as far as just general um, sale at the stores, I'm not in favor of that.
Mr. James, if you look at the crime and violence statistics for Alabama, we're one of the most violent states. But areas like my St. Clair County has a pretty low rate of violence, and your district, with Lee and Randolph, that those counties, it's pretty low on the violent section. But then we have portions like portion of Montgomery, portion of Mobile, pretty much all of Birmingham, Pritchard, Selma, Anniston to a point where, the murder and the shooting rates are like astronomical compared to the national average. Is there something the state can do to address crime in these little pockets, urban pockets that, apparently life is cheaper or something going on down there to improve that situation, maybe reduce some of, our rankings nationally, for violence. I mean, it's not good when anybody gets killed.
Well, a lot of that I think comes in because you know, those areas, there's not a lot of education in some areas. So I think building up the education, the state could providing mental health and drug awareness programs because those are the two areas where a lot of this violence comes from is from mental health, you know, or the mental health issue and kids that grow up and they don't get a job, they don't have both parents in the home. So I think things like that, if we could work through the social programs to assist people in that way, that could help us a lot in those areas.
Along those same lines, here recently we've had the documentary, The Alabama Solution, and it showed the draconian conditions of our prison systems. What do you think needs to be done to address it, and how can it be done?
Well, there've been some money out there for prison systems, and I think when people are in jail, especially for the nonviolent things and things that they are, if they're in for a few years, doing more to rehabilitate, the people that have committed these crimes, so that when they get out, they fit into a community and can find a job and have a trade that they could work at. And somebody that's busy not near as likely to get in trouble as somebody that's not busy. So trying to keep everybody, working and things to do with different types of recreation and programs to assist them as they come out and change would be fantastic. And while people are in jail or in prison, to be able to get their GED, to further their education with an associate's degree, or even work on a college degree while they're there.
Along the lines of economic development, but we've got a very poor workforce participation rate. It seems like over 40% of working adult Alabamians don't work compared to other states. Is there something we're doing in the education process where somebody gets a high school diploma and then just goes back at home and sits on the couch with mom and dad?
Well, I think a lot of those numbers are just maybe have played it a little bit because of retirees coming to Alabama. We in our area up here, we do have a lot of retirees, especially from Georgia, that are buying property and coming over here and living, and that could inflate that number some too. And there again, I think with workforce development and our career centers, of really helping, people get into a trade if they don't want to go to college, because college is not for everyone. Here in our county, uh, we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need home builders. The trades like that are not like they used to be. Bricklayers, block masons, as far as those type things, I think if we keep those into our career centers where we can keep those people busy and have a good trade, because I'm going to tell you, a good plumber can make a really good living nowadays.
Mr. Jackson, let me ask you this right here. I think I forgot what the figures was for a superintendent, but you'd be taking a huge pay cut to be a legislator. What makes you want to do that?
Well, I'm kind of getting on up towards retirement, age. I'm ready to spend a little bit more time with my grandkids and not be, 7:30 to 4:30 or 5 every day and not counting, events at night. I feel like this is a way that I can still make an impact on education and make an impact on the daily lives of people here in our district, and try to stay active and do things, for our people. I've always felt like what I do, is a public service. I get paid, to do it, but I'm not really doing it for the money. Because, like you say, it would be a pay cut. But then again, I've got 40 years in education, 10 years as superintendent, and I enjoy the people I work with. I enjoy what I do. I've been in Montgomery enough to see how the process works and some people that I've met down there. And I really feel like people in the legislature are doing what they can to help people of Alabama. So I want to help the people of Alabama. This is just doing it in a little bit of a different way than sitting behind my desk here in Randolph County.
Uh, in the last 4 years, we watched our college athletics get transformed by NIL, where the players get paid. There's already some states where it's legal to actually pay high school players, with talent, where they get NIL money. Is that something Alabama should adopt or should not allow?
Well, and I'll touch on the college a little bit too. I'm not opposed to a college athlete being able to earn some money because after their classes, they don't have time to go work at a local store to have some spending money. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think kids ought to be making $2 or $3 million to play football. Kind of the same way for high schools. Our neighboring state, Georgia, here, uh, student athletes can earn NIL money, and there are some athletes in this area that go to Georgia so they can get some NIL money. I hate to get it in high school because high school kids, I just don't know if they have the financial background to be able to handle that kind of money, at a very early age.
Are they getting that type of cash? I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go play high school football
$1 million.
in Georgia? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the reports. I have been told that there are some kids making $1 million over there.
Heck, back when I played, I know I'd cross the state line for $20,000.
I mean, God.
Of course, I played it a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
Um, well, I asked you about the district, what was the issue? Is there any issue you think that's most important facing the state right now?
Well, the state, I think the long-term financial, aspects of the state. I think the prison system, upgrading the prison system, um, our educational facilities, and the state does a bond, generally about every 8 or 9 years. Um, when across the Black Belt, and not only the Black Belt, but here in Randolph and Chambers County, we have some schools that were built in the 20s, the 1920s.
Yeah.
And, you know, they weren't built to last 100 years. Most schools are built, a new building now, they think could last maybe 40 years. And a lot of that goes back to the simple things like not having enough electricity, the the infrastructure for the cabling and fiber optics. So I think improving our school facilities, helping our police and people like that, so that everybody feels safe, and the transportation issue throughout the state. The infrastructure as far as our roads and bridges is keeping them, up to date on repairs.
The House passed a bill to you know put the Ten Commandments on the wall of every school building. Do you think that might be a problem with some school districts if that passes out of the Senate?
I'm not, aware of any districts that it would be an issue with. Here in Randolph County, I don't believe there would be any issue with that. I've got on my desk in here, I have in my office, in Wedowee, there's a set of Ten Commandments and, Bill of Rights there. Because the country was founded on the principles, of God, and we have our laws in place. And our folks need to realize that, and look toward those things.
Um, I think that's all I've got for you. We kept you almost 40 minutes, unless there's any other questions Brandon had.
No, I mean I can keep asking questions all day. That's just Brandon.
Yeah.
But is there anything you'd like to add?
I think what I can bring to the table is having some experience in Montgomery, knowing legislators already, and how the process works. It's a lot different from local government and the processes. One thing I think that hurts me is I'm not able to get out a lot during the day. My other two opponents in the Republican primary are both retired. So they have 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But I'm an elected official, and I am going to do my job that I was elected to do, and then campaign when I can. So I hope people keep that in their mind, that I'm not neglecting anyone. I'm just committed to my job, and I would be just as committed at District 37 as I am to my job as a superintendent of education. All right, I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs.
All right, y'all be good. Thank you.